Welcome back, football fanatics, to the First and 10 Club with me, your host, Mark D. So it is week 6 in the NFL, and it is Thursday, which is our picks and predictions show. I tell you who I like and don't like this week for fantasy, and I give you my, opinions and thoughts when we get to running out the clock. And this week, we're going to visit my favorite team in the NFL, the New York hapless Jets. Among some other fun topics. But before we get to all that, we're going to talk about Tuesday Night Football. That's right, we had Tuesday Night Football in Week 5 of the NFL season, thanks to COVID, and that was between the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. So, wow, it was interesting coming into this game. I was on the Bills for this game. I thought they'd have the edge. But the Bills really came into this game pretty beat up, missing some really key players, especially on the defensive side of the football. And surprisingly, handed, having the players out with COVID, and really with no prep time and no practice, Tennessee came out and really controlled this game. Not to mention, if you haven't by now, the stiff arm heard round the world, where Derrick Henry put Josh Norman on his backside, and that's being really, really nice when I describe it. Really. Uh, Look, Josh Norman is having a decent 2 weeks. Let's put it this way, 2 weeks. And I can't even say that really anymore. He made some really big plays last week. But this week, he was just absolutely beat time and time again by A.J. Brown. And for the Bills, if you're going to rely on Josh Norman to be your number one cornerback, take it from a Washington football team fan who has seen him over the past 2 years decline, you guys are in trouble. So, yeah, Tennessee wins that game. Practice? We talking about practice? I was surprised. It really was. They looked pretty good. They looked very prepared. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for the NFL, but hats off to Tennessee on that one. Derrick Henry still not looking like the Derrick Henry I was expecting. And it's weird. It's going to be really interesting to see if he just explodes again in the second half of the season, like he seems to do every year. Maybe that's just it. Maybe he is just a second half running back. I don't know why he can't do it in the first half. He had 2 touchdowns. For fantasy purposes, it was great, but not a whole lot of yardage. Average yards per carry was down again. So definitely looking a little off from the King, but doesn't matter. They get the win. They get the win pretty handily, in my opinion. So that wrapped up week number 5. So let's get to week number 6. Let's start talking about fantasy and who we like, who we don't like. So last week you had a couple of players just absolutely explode onto the scene. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler here. I'm not super high on those guys that exploded last week. I'm talking primarily about Chase Claypool and Travis Fulgham of the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, we talk all the time about chasing points. Don't chase points. I think that's important to note. They had great weeks. I'm not saying they'll be shut out this week, but don't chase points. So who do I like this week? Who is catching my eye in week number 6? So for defenses, for people who are still playing team defenses, this is just an easy pick. I think it's fair. It looks like Joe Flacco is going to be the quarterback again for the New York Jets. The New York Jets have 0 weapons. And Miami's defense is not bad. I mean, look what they did to San Francisco this past week. So I'm all about Miami this week. And if you're streaming, that is a team that is available in most fantasy leagues. Nobody was picking Miami up and stashing them for the season-long ride. Another team that I'm really high on this week is the Washington football team. Hear me out. I understand that we just got decimated. Yeah, I get it. But if there was ever a stretch of 3 games where you're going to find out really what the Washington football team is for 2020, it's the next 3 games coming up. We play the Giants, we play Dallas, and then we play the Giants again. Dallas, I'm not taking away from their offense, even with the Dak injury. The Giants, however, that is just kind of a hapless mess right now. And I know as I'm saying this now, they're just going to kill my team. But looking at it on pen and paper, I do believe that Washington's getting healthy especially on the defensive side of the ball. The New York Giants offensive line is atrocious, and I think it's a matchup that they absolutely dominate. Does that mean that, Daniel Jones doesn't get a deep ball? Yeah, there's probably a good chance of it. Slayton could very easily get a deep touchdown, or even Evan Ingram, because our safeties can't cover. But I think for the whole of the day, I'd expect to see some turnovers in this game, maybe even a defensive score. I like Washington. So those are the two defenses I'm kind of keying on this week, Washington and Miami. Quarterbacks that I like this week. Love me some Matty Stafford. Matt Stafford this week going up against Jacksonville. Kirk Cousins. Hopefully. I'll get to that later in the show. But love Kirk Cousins going up against Atlanta and their depleted secondary. Kirk Cousins is not a primetime game. Knows how to throw the rock. I think he does throw the rock. I think he has a massively effective, productive Sunday afternoon, especially for your fantasy teams. And then you have, I have on the list, Andy Dalton. And, okay, why? Yeah, do I expect Dallas to run the ball more? Yeah, I do. But here's why I have Andy Dalton on this list. One, I do think you can throw against Arizona with depth. Arizona just lost their top pass rusher for the year. So having those two things in place, and on top of it, you have Dallas's defense, which is not good. So if Dallas' defense allows Arizona to put up points, game script is going to have it that, unfortunately, Andy Dalton's going to have to throw the ball more. Now, hopefully, Andy Dalton can stay upright because Dallas's offensive line is not much better. So those are the three quarterbacks that I'm in on for week number 6. Matt Stafford, Andy Dalton, and Kirk Cousins. Running backs. Now, running backs this week is a very interesting kind of group. So we're going to start with Mike Davis of the Carolina Panthers. Look, I understand he's going up against the Chicago Bears, and I don't think he's going to have a great day running the football. However, Chicago has a pretty good defense. Where I do think he is going to be just absolute money for your fantasy teams or your DFS teams is I expect to see him get a ton of dump-off work. Whether it's safety outlets, whether it's screens, I can see for him 6-7 receptions within the area of possibly 10 targets in this game. I think that's just the way the game flow is going to go, and it is an area where Chicago is a little bit susceptible. So I do like Mike Davis this week, especially just because of volume. I also love the gas can. Gaskins from Miami going up against the New York Jets. The New York Jets really haven't been able to stop anybody. I think that's a smash spot for him this week because I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And then my last one is Raheem Mostert of the San Francisco 49ers. So they play the LA Rams. And yes, looking at what Miami did to them last week, you would think, and facing the Rams are a good team. But it's a division game. San Francisco is not just going to roll over in this game. And I think it was very evident and very clear last week that if it is Garoppolo, he's not going to be throwing the ball a ton. And you're not going to throw the ball a ton on the Rams to begin with. Where the Rams have been susceptible is against pass-catching running backs. And Mostert has just excelled in his role with San Francisco, whether it's catching the ball in the backfield, whether it's hitting the zone gaps. Mostert, I think, has a very, very good week. So those are the running backs I'm high on this week. And then when we get to wide receiver, all right, there's no sleepers here. This is a list of who's who, but these are absolute smash spots this week. The first one, we already talked about it. D-Hop, DeAndre Hopkins going up against Dallas's horrible pass defense. Kyler Murray, you saw the dime that he threw to him last week. I expect more of that. I expect him to have a very, very big statistical game. We talked about Kirk Cousins and Atlanta, and if Kirk Cousins is succeeding, I believe Adam Thielen succeeds this week. You can see the connection there. That is his go-to guy, and I don't believe Atlanta has anyone that can stop Mr. Thielen. And my third one, mark this day because it doesn't happen very often that I give praise to one Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ. And I know, okay, the Cleveland Browns are going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get it. But look at what Travis Fulgham did to the Steelers last week. Look at the games the Steelers have played. Yes, they're undefeated. Yes, they have a very, very impenetrable, dare I say, run defense. But they have given up yards through the air. This is a winnable matchup, and OBJ has the Browns have seemed to be recommitted to him. They're throwing to him early and often. Whether it's a trick play or not, I think OBJ gets involved in this game early, and I think OBJ scores double-digit points easily this week for your fantasy team. If it's a PPR league, I think you have the chance of breaking 20 points. Big smash spot this week, I think, for OBJ. Tight ends I like this week. I love Hockenson, TJ Hockenson for Detroit and Jacksonville. And I'm putting a name out there that probably no one has talked about, but I just see him getting into the end zone this weekend. And I will say you right now, it's more anything just a gut feeling. I'm watching him get more involved in the offense. And I think against, again, the putrid Atlanta defense's secondary, that he makes it to the end zone this week. And that is one Irv Smith. It's kind of a forgotten name. Everyone thought he was going to break out last year and had these high expectations for him, and Kyle Rudolph said, no, I'm still here. And Kyle Rudolph is still there, but I think Irv Smith finds the end zone this week. So, defenses, or let's go to players I don't like or people that I'm fading. So, defenses this week, all right, two very, very stout defenses that I'm just not completely sold on for this week. First off is Indianapolis. Indianapolis is still battling a lot of injuries, and they're facing a Cincinnati team that is pretty feisty, and they got kicked in the teeth last week by the Baltimore Ravens. I don't foresee Joe Burrow and the crew in Cincinnati allowing that to happen again in back-to-back weeks. So I'm not saying that, Cincinnati's going to come out and crush the Colts. I'm not making that game call. What I am saying, though, is if you're looking in terms of daily fantasy or you have them on your season-long leagues, the Indianapolis Colts this week might not produce the way you would hope them to. And in that same breath, my second team that I'm fading this week is the Baltimore Ravens. Again, don't chase points. Baltimore had a gangbuster week 5. In some cases, hands down, easily the highest scoring defense. On top of that, they outscored, and I talked about this in my Tuesday show, they outscored Cincinnati themselves. The offense didn't even have to show up. I don't foresee that happening. They play Philadelphia this week, and, I do believe that the Baltimore Ravens are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles this week. But the one thing the Eagles always seem to do no matter what is find a way to hang around in games. And I believe that you're going to see more of that this week in Philadelphia. You're going to see Carson Wentz put up points. You're going to see them make plays. And that just doesn't make for a incredible output for a team defense. So fading Baltimore, fading Indianapolis this week. For quarterbacks, there's not a whole lot of areas for quarterbacks that I don't like. I mean, obviously the obvious ones. I'm not starting Joe Flacco. I'm not starting Gardner Minshew. These are just players that I'm not starting normally. But one player or the position that I'm fading this week is the San Francisco quarterbacks. Health, not health, whatever. Whether it's Garoppolo, whether it's Beathard, whether it's Mullins, you have no clue who they're going to roll out for starters. And two, I just don't see it being a recipe for success going up against the LA Rams this week. So fading the San Francisco quarterbacks. Running backs that I'm out on this week. For starters, Frank Gore. That's all I'm going to say because I'm going to just attack the New York Jets when we get to run out the clock. But Frank Gore, out. Not that I would ever really be in on him. I tried that once. I gave him his one opportunity. Never again. Melvin Gordon, for a couple of reasons. First off, I do believe you would be the focal point of Bill Belichick's defensive stop the best player mentality. And two, there's just no excuse. There's no excuse for DUI anymore. If you've had too much to drink, call an Uber. I just don't get it. Call a friend. You're an NFL player. You're telling me there is no one you can pick the phone up and call. I'm pretty sure he could have picked the phone up and called one of his coaches and they would have come and picked him up as opposed to him getting a DUI. And I know he's not going to be suspended and all that. It's a lot hanging on you in this week. So, out on Melvin Gordon this week. And the last one I'm out on is Miles Sanders. Again, I kind of called Miles Sanders a little bit of a fraud for last week. I know he had 2 touchdowns, and 80-some yards, but really that was only because of a 74-yard run, and I just don't see that happening against Baltimore. I think, again, it would be kind of chasing points. I don't expect that output. Obviously not benching him. You're not benching, those types of players. Those are your linchpins for your fantasy team unless you have something significantly better. But just not high on them. Moving on to wide receivers, I don't like DJ Chark this week. I think Jeff Okudah is starting to find his feet in the NFL. And I think Detroit is going to be smart enough to realize that DJ Chark is the passing game in Jacksonville. So I'm out on DJ Chark this week. And then Chase Claypool. Look, I'm not saying that Pittsburgh won't be able to throw the ball on the Cleveland Browns, but you still have a lot of really good wide receivers there. One, I really do believe Chase Claypool's value is directly affected by Deontay Johnson. I think if Deontay Johnson's health is there, Chase Claypool's targets and snap share go down significantly. I just don't see him putting up anywhere close to the week that he had last week. Now, does that mean he gets maybe a deep touchdown? Yeah, but I just don't see him being the focal point. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the next breakout star. For dynasty teams, I'll tell you right now, I do like Chase Claypool because I don't believe Pittsburgh re-signs Juju Schuster in the offseason. So I think Claypool and Deontay Johnson are the future at wide receiver there. But for this week, it's a no. And then at tight end, I'm out on the Rams tight ends this week against the San Francisco 49ers. Whether it's Higbee, whether it's Everett, you're already having to try and figure out who's going to have the results week to week. I'm not starting Rams tight ends this week. Plain and simple. Before I move on to bold predictions for this week, one of the things I want to talk about is someone asked me, why I don't give more reasoning and statistics as to why I'm making my picks of who I like and I don't like. Because I'm not a person that sits there and just pages through tons upon spreadsheets and information and numbers. And I'm not saying I don't look at it. I do. But a lot of this is more my take from watching the games. And I think a lot of times we need to remember that you are playing a fantasy game based on the game of football. If numbers told the entire story, there'd be no reason to play the games. You could just look at the paper and decide how it's going to be. Over my years of playing fantasy, if there is one bit of advice I can give to players who are newer, is play who got you there. Okay, there's a reason you are taking players like Ezekiel Elliott in the first round. There's a reason, or Christian McCaffrey. And we use the term matchup proof. It's not necessarily that they're matchup proof, but these players are designed to get the job done or being paid to get the job done week in and week out. That's why you draft them where you draft them. So a lot of times, like when I talked about, we'll use Miles Sanders as an example, that I'm down on Miles Sanders this week. That just means I'm not probably using him for DFS. If I have him on my fantasy team, there is no way that I am not going to start him because he is a focal point of the Philadelphia Eagles offense. So keep that in mind when we're saying this stuff. I don't just look at it, if I have Ezekiel Elliott going up against the number one defense in the league, and I don't know, we'll use Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman of the Giants going up against the third worst running defense. I don't see a scenario where I'm ever benching Ezekiel Elliott just because he's going up against a good run defense. So that's kind of how I get my players I like and don't like. Okay, so as we start to kind of wrap the show up here, bold predictions for this week. Talking about people that, the pundits that are out there, the analysts that are out there, one name that keeps coming up that I see people not liking this week is Terry McLaurin of the Washington football team. And yes, Bradbury for the Giants has played extremely well this year. However, Terry McLaurin has held his own against the best corners in the league. That does not scare me at all. So everybody that's saying they're off on him or you should sit him this week, nope. My first bold prediction for the week is Terry McLaurin gets 100 yards receiving this week against the New York Giants and 2 touchdowns. 2 of them. I might be totally wrong, but I know Terry McLaurin has these types of weeks and has this type of connection. I think now with the second week and no Jalen Ramsey, he looks to bounce back. And I think he has a very, very successful Sunday afternoon. My second bold prediction is a little tongue-in-cheek. And as I say it, if you know me, you might understand why. I think the Jets get crushed this week by Miami. And Gase keeps his job. So the Jets go to 0-6, and still Adam Gase keeps his job. Now, one of two things happen with this bold prediction. Either one, hopefully I'm right on the Jets getting crushed, and I do believe that. I think Miami handles them easily this week. So I get the bold prediction right. That's great because Gase keeps his job. Or I'm wrong on this bold prediction, and for the sake of all New York Jets fans out there, Adam Gase is canned, shown the door, and you guys get to move on to hopefully rebuilding and resembling something of a successful football team. Believe me, I've been there with Washington. I understand your pain. And then my third bold prediction for the week, and this is an bold prediction. If Dalvin Cook does not play this week for the Minnesota Vikings, because now there's rumblings that he might suit up for week 6. But if he doesn't, you are going to see that the Minnesota Vikings have not 1, but 2 NFL high-profile running backs, only second to the Cleveland Browns and Chubb and Hunt, as Madison goes off for 100 yards rushing and 1 TD. Those are my bold predictions for the week. We'll see how we do. Moving on to our game picks for the week. All right, so before we get into game picks, I'll be honest, I had this date circled, or this week circled, and the reason I did was it was Buffalo versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and I thought this was going to be the week the Kansas City Chiefs lose. I thought this would be the week that they'd lose their undefeated season to Buffalo. They're traveling to Buffalo. And the reason I thought this was Buffalo has a very, very nasty defense, and what some people are saying is the next Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Thought it'd be a great game to watch. Still think it's going to be a good game to watch. However, I'm having a very hard time getting behind the Bills this week. Why? Not anything per se against the Bills, but they're just too beat up on defense. And 2, the Raiders went and had to pop the bubble a week early. I just can't see any way, shape, or form that the Kansas City Chiefs dropped 2 weeks in a row. So, unfortunately, I just have a hard time believing that the Buffalo Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs this week. Sorry, Bills fans. So let's get to my game picks. My lock of the week. We're going to talk about this too when we run out the clock. But my lock of the week, as now the team seems to be getting healthy, New England over the Denver Broncos. Denver's getting a little healthy too. They get Drew Lock back, it looks like. But going to New England with a full complement of weapons, I just don't think Denver has enough with their depleted defense. They've been decimated by injuries. I think New England wins this game easily. That's my lock of the week, New England over Denver. My second pick of the week, I'm taking Detroit over Jacksonville. As I said before, I think we're starting to see really who the Jacksonville Jaguars are this year. And Detroit seems to be a team that's on the up and coming. My third pick of the week, maybe this is a little bit of an upset pick, but I am taking the Carolina Panthers to beat the Chicago Bears. I don't believe in Nick Foles. And I just don't think there is enough there around Nick Foles, with the exception of Allen Robinson, to really get the job done. And Carolina is finding ways to win. Matt Rule, as I said before, I tip my hat to him, has absolutely done a great job of getting this team motivated to play. I think they come out. I think they beat the Chicago Bears this week. Now, for my Thursday game pick, oh wait, there is no Thursday game thanks to COVID. I don't know what I'm going to do with my night, but I am taking a Monday night game in place of it. And I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys beating the Arizona Cardinals. I think with Dak gone, the team is motivated to come out and make a statement. Andy Dalton shows that he is the best backup quarterback in the NFL. And they come out and they edge out the Arizona Cardinals. I think it'll be a fun game to watch. A lot of offense in this game, a lot of action. So, Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket. I know, it's Red Rifle, but Red Rocket. Comes out and leads the Dallas Cowboys to a win over the Cardinals. And with that, it's time to run out the clock. So, we talked about the fact that New England is playing Denver this week. That's not what game was supposed to be played this week. This game got delayed. This game got pushed off because of COVID. And I'm sorry, I don't want to claim conspiracy theory here, but I do find it convenient that this game got canceled, and I know it's precautionary reasons, but all of a sudden now, New England has their quarterback back. Cam Newton will be back this week, they're saying, and the Defensive Player of the Year is also coming back. I find it very convenient that when the chips seem to be down for New England, things just always seem to kind of work out for them. Might just be a hell of a coincidence. Probably is a hell of a coincidence. But seems to be awfully convenient for the New England Patriots that they're able to get that impromptu bye with the game canceled and now come back nice and healthy to face a Denver team that should have been an easy win. But I don't know if it would have been an easy win if they would have had to play this game last week. So, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, on to my favorite source for information in the 2020 season. The New York Jets. Jets, Jets. Adam Gase, how do you have a job? The procession of players just keep going out the door. Nobody wants to play for you. And I'm not saying that Le'Veon Bell is a saint in the NFL. He's not. He might be over the hill. He might be at the end of his career. But I do find it really, really interesting that people just don't want to be there. It's very hard to assemble a roster full of NFL talent when NFL talent doesn't want to come play for you. The product you put out on Sunday is horrible, and now here we go again. So you say that you tried to trade him. Okay, I believe that. I believe you tried to trade Le'Veon Bell, and I understand that nobody wants to give you anything. Well, Again, I see the mirror here from the Washington history to what's going on with you right now. New York, the Jets organization. Did you hire Bruce Allen? Because it seems who's running your front office. When you talk about a disgruntled employee or a disgruntled player over and over again, odds are teams aren't going to give you a hill of spit because the odds are you're going to get rid of them. You're going to let them go. When the player's talking about wanting to be traded and just not wanting to play there anymore, and you basically saying, okay, we don't want you here either, why is someone going to give up any type of capital to go get that player? When a good betting man would say that, you know what, sooner or later that player is going to become available. So Le'Veon Bell is now on the market. He is free and clear. I'm curious to see, does he go the way of Earl Thomas and just nobody signing him? I think he finds a spot. He's free. That's the other thing about it. He's free. Any team can pick him up right now, and he's free. He can only make $6 million this year. And, oh, by the way, that's paid by the Jets. So you could pick him up for $10 game checks from your organization because he's getting paid. So he gets to prove it. And, okay, if that's the case, if I'm Le'Veon Bell and I have to go play somewhere where I know they're not paying me, they're relying on the Jets to pay me, or pay you, I think you're going to see him end up in Chicago, where I think he could potentially carve out a pretty good role for himself, especially with Tariq Cohen going down. Le'Veon Bell can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think Chicago could be a very interesting marriage there. Or where all broken football players in their aging prime seem to go. Who would be surprised if he ended up in New England? I think that's probably one of the two areas where he goes. I've heard some other teams thrown around. I've heard the New York Giants. I don't think Le'Veon Bell stays in New York. I'll be surprised by that. I've heard the Chiefs, maybe. Stockpiling weapons to make a run is one thing. I don't know that Andy Reid really brings that culture in there. So I'd be surprised by that. I've heard the Falcons. I don't really understand that one, but okay. So it'll be interesting to see. I still think when it's all said and done, it's Chicago or New England becomes Bell's new home. And in my final kneel down, don't look now, football fans, but it looks like COVID might be striking again. As I went in to start recording today for today's episode, there was breaking news that the Atlanta Falcons had shut down their team facilities after an outbreak of COVID. Now, I don't have any more details on that right now. I don't know if it's players. I don't know if it's coaches, personnel, whatever. But again, we're dealing with COVID again. Now, COVID is going to exist. It's not the point of my rambling here or me getting up on my soapbox. What I don't understand is why the obtuse approach to this season. And I understand they wanted to keep the schedule as is and play the Super Bowl when they play the Super Bowl. And I get that. But this is going to start to become a scheduling nightmare. And I said it in an earlier show. I don't understand why the NFL, knowing what the season was going to be, didn't build in league-wide bye weeks. I think as fans, we would have been fine with that. I understand we want football every week. That's fine. And if you want football every week, that's fine too. There are so many algorithms that exist and with computers and whatnot. There's no reason you couldn't have done this. If you wanted it to be that everybody wasn't off in the same week, well, then have the NFC off one week and the following week the AFC. Do something along those lines. But there should have been more than one bye week built in or traditional bye weeks built into the 2020 season. Sorry, this was a mistake. This was a mistake the NFL made, and it's going to start coming back to haunt them. COVID is not going to go away. So now we will sit here and collectively hold our breath to see what happens between the Atlanta-Minnesota game. Hopefully it doesn't get canceled. Hopefully, if it does get pushed back, it doesn't affect future games. But eventually, this is going to start having a snowball effect. Perfect example. Last week, you postponed the Denver-New England game because of issues with New England. So Denver's had their bye week. What happens in 2 or 3 weeks if Denver has an outbreak? What happens then? Their bye week is played. As we sit and we watch week 6 of the NFL, we're almost halfway through. But COVID is starting to rear its ugly head, and we're starting to get into what the nation is saying, which could be the second wave due to fall and flu season. It becomes a very scary time. Speaking as a fan, the last thing I want to see is the season canceled without being completed. That's all I got to say, and that's my 2 cents for week 6. Good luck, everybody, with your game picks. As always, if you liked the show, click the subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit the little bell so you follow and don't miss our episodes. If you have comments or questions about start, sit, don't like what I have to say, let me hear it. Let me hear it in the comments below. Check us out on Twitter, the First and 10 Club. And as always, let's go football.